Thank you, Commissioner Gomez, and thank you for everybody that organized this event and invited me to come speak. This is a real thrill, I can tell you. I also want to start by telling you about the time my wife dragged my teenage son to hear his old man speak, and afterwards I was quite interested to hear what he thought about it. Well, he didn't say anything. A few days went by and I'd forgotten all about it when one morning at breakfast he suddenly put down his spoon and said, "You know, Dad, you're not as boring as I thought you are." The man's name was Josiah Wilbarger. In 1827, the Wilbargers lived up in Pike County, Missouri, but Josiah determined to bring his family to Texas. And if you look at a map, it's easy to see how they would have done so. They would have hauled all their stuff over to the Mississippi River, floated down the river to New Orleans, and even in 1827, there were regular boat runs between New Orleans and several spots on the Texas coast. Well, Josiah accompanied him on one such trip. Josiah had some skills as a surveyor. This trip was in 1830. And also along was a man named Reuben Hornsby, who had just arrived from Georgia with his wife and several sons. In 1833, Josiah agreed to take 4 men on just such a tour. These guys' names were Standifer, Haney, Christian, and Strother. And they left on horseback one morning, followed from the mouth of Walnut Creek, where it empties into the Colorado River. This was on the Wilbarger property or near there. And they followed the creek for several miles before turning at one of the branches, one of the tributaries, and following that up to what is now the intersection of Mopac and Breaker Lane. And these 5 men were on a small hillside there, and if you go there, it's hard to imagine with all the buildings and everything, but there is some topography to the land. Well, they were on this hillside, and Josiah looked across at the other ridge, and he saw a lone Indian on horseback. Now, this spooked the guys a little bit. Everybody knew that the Mexicans had said to Stephen F. Austin, "Sure, bring in Anglo settlers." Well, as it turns out, nobody had thought to ask the Comanche Indians their opinion of the matter. But Josiah looked over and he saw his friend Christian lying helpless on the ground. He ran over to help him. In the process, was shot in the hip himself with a bullet, did not hit his bone, just a flesh wound, and was hit in one calf with an arrow. Nevertheless, he made it to Christian, propped him up against a tree, found his rifle, got it ready to fire, handed it to him, and dove back for his own cover, and in doing so was hit unbelievably in the other calf with an arrow. Standifer and Haney have seen what's going on, and they figure those 3 guys are goners, so they jump on their horses that are still right there, and they're about to ride away when Josiah hollers out for them to wait. And to their credit, they did. But Josiah can't really run anymore. So he stood up, and as best he could, he's making his way towards Standifer and Haney when yet another bullet enters the back of his neck, exits his throat, passes just adjacent to the spine. It didn't cripple him, but there was enough swelling, I suppose, to temporarily paralyze him. And he fell to the ground conscious but unable to move. The next time he woke up, it was dark, and he's cold, and he's all by himself, and he thinks he's going to die. When all of a sudden he looks up, and standing 10 feet in front of him, he saw his sister Margaret. Now, Josiah knew full well that Margaret Wilbarger still lived back in Pike County, Missouri, but he also knew what he saw, and there she was, as plain as could be, and he called out to her and he said, "Margaret, please help me." And she said, "Josiah, you're going to be okay. Stay right here. Your friends will be by tomorrow, and they'll help you." And he said, "Please stay with me." But she disappeared. In 1845, unfortunately, Josiah bumped his head on a wooden beam in his house. The skull had deteriorated over time. It must have cracked. He quickly fell into a coma, probably from meningitis, and died. But he did survive this by 12 years. Anyway, that's chapter 1 in the book, The Republic of Austin. There's copies of that in the other book I have out that you can peruse, and I thank you for your attention.